Mark Houck has been a 40 Days for Life volunteer since 2007. In 2021, he was involved in an altercation when a Planned Parenthood escort was attacking his son. Local prosecutors didn't press charges, local police took no action. But then, Mark was told that he was the target of the FACE Act. He and his lawyers, represented by 40 Days for Life, sent multiple letters telling them that Mark would turn himself in. Those letters went ignored. Mark's house was raided by the FBI in front of his wife and 7 children. Mark was then taken to downtown Philadelphia, where he was chained to a table for 6 hours. Facing 11 years in prison, the Houcks courageously decided not to take the deal at the last minute from the FBI to protect all pro-life activists from similar raids and injustice. Mark was acquitted by a jury of his peers in Philadelphia in less than an hour. Mark has now decided to sue the DOJ, and I recently was able to catch up with he and his wife, Ryan Marie. So it's good to see y'all. How's your family?
Growing.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we're blessed. You know, it's a great life. You know, we're in Lent. It's Easter time. We're happy.
Yeah, it's good. It's very, very good. You know, the lawsuit, which was filed, nearly a year ago now. It's been a great process, but it's been a process, and people look up and they go, "You can't sue the DOJ," but you can for targeting and discrimination. And your case is very strong. We've gotten great media coverage from the case. And then something happened in our country, which was the re-election of Donald Trump. And one of the big platforms that he ran on was you and the weaponization of the DOJ, that it was absolutely out of control under Biden. And you're sort of, unfortunately, y'all are the face of that. Y'all are the poster child of how bad it got under Biden. And there are other examples. And Trump's done a great job at pardoning a lot of, pro-lifers and people that were harassed and arrested. So as far as, the reform of the DOJ, we'll get to how good or bad that is going, but where does your case stand now?
Yeah, I'm amazed at how many people don't even know that we're suing the government within the whole political infrastructure. So it's kind of like on the down low in that, and that was fine. We weren't looking to get media attention with it, but if that helps, great. But yeah, over a year later now, we're kind of in this kind of position where we could settle the case, but we're just not sure. What's going to happen as the DOJ is trying to triage everything that's coming in post the inauguration of Donald Trump. We had a judge that was dealing with the case, and we were in settlement negotiations with the DOJ, and then
the DOJ came to you.
They did.
Okay.
And they wanted to settle the case.
Like right the wrong, basically.
Right.
Under the new.
Just acknowledge, okay, we're not happy about this, and let's go into settlement negotiations. They asked for a stay of the case to the federal judge in the Third Circuit. Stay it, 30 days, let's negotiate with the Houcks, let's bring justice, peace, and closure to the Houck family, right? And we're like, okay, great. Finally, this is coming to an end. We can move on with our lives. We don't have to keep meeting Sean Carney in a bistro somewhere and talking about this case, right? But then the judge just he pulled a fast one, and he ruled on it in the midst of negotiations.
In the midst of the stay.
In the midst of the stay.
Because you never hear that happening. Judges, they want settlement. They always tell the lawyers, go settle this.
That's what our lawyers
said.
told us. Yeah.
They're not going to frustrate justice, if the two parties can come together. But he decided that he was going to rule on it and victimize us again, which is incredible.
It's so disappointing because, and one of my fears is that I think Trump is doing a fantastic job. I love the Kash Patel pick. I love Pam Bondi. But as you've experienced and 40 Days for Life have experienced, those are two people. And the DOJ is 80,000 people. And we have, as you know, a former DOJ attorney who's part of our team. I know many friends who are former federal prosecutors, and they're kind of shaking their head going, look, they'll be able to cut some money going to, transgender kids in Venezuela or whatever, but gutting the DOJ is difficult, if not impossible. If anybody can do it, it's the Trump administration. But this was, in my view, not a good start, because if you have a stay and they're like, go settle, and the DOJ came to you and said,
Right.
okay, we're going to fix this. We get it. This has got to go away. It's bad PR. And then the judge, so now you're not only dealing with a weaponization of the DOJ, you're dealing with an activist judge who Americans hate. Everybody hates an activist judge, no matter if you agree with them or not. Nobody likes it. Is that like reliving everything over again?
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for Ryan Marie, but for me, it was like, okay, as we come to this point where we really want to bring that closure, that the finality, it's trauma repetition is what it is. The judge decided to continue to inflict trauma by not allowing us to bring peace and settlement and just hope to our future. He basically said, no, I'm going to render a decision that's not going to enable you to bring that closure, and I'm going to open the door for continued weaponization of American citizens.
Well, it just enables everybody.
Right.
Because the DOJ is like, well, heck, we were trying to settle this, but a judge threw it out. How does that not enable them to, it's not like 30,000 people have been fired from the FBI, how does that not enable the people that are still there to continue to do this to anybody they disagree with?
I mean, it basically told us that the government did nothing wrong, right?
That's
essentially
what the
what
judge
it says.
said, that the government did nothing wrong, and that it's basically reasonable to believe that they had good intentions, that they were just doing their job.
He specifically said because Pennsylvania state troopers and FBI were behind their doors holding pistols, they had reason to believe that the Houck family was a threat to them. But meanwhile, that's just their protocol, right? That's just what they do.
This is the problem. And this has been, you've told your story a million times, but everybody knows you have no priors.
Right.
You're not running cocaine to Miami on the weekends. And it's like, that's why they brought all those guys.
I don't own a weapon.
You don't own a gun. But they had reason to believe that they needed, 25
right.
people.
And I'm not a flight risk either, because I've lived in the community my entire life. So all the checks that you need. Plus, Matt Britton said we would turn ourselves in.
Right.
Right? So we have everything there that says this man is peaceful. There's no reason to bring any trauma to them on this morning on a Friday in September 2022.
We've yet to meet a federal prosecutor who's ever heard of them ignoring a letter of somebody turning themselves in. And just from the, why do all the raid and everything? Just say, yeah, he's going to turn himself in. Your case is the first that many have ever even heard of something like that happening.
Well, it's the same with the judge. Everyone's like, this is the first time I think I've...
In the history of judges.
We have there's 10 lawyers, and every single one was like, this has never happened. Like, a judge is there to help you mediate, basically. They want you...
He doesn't want to get in the way of that.
Find an agreement, right? Like, he's not there to...
And that's why people don't like, activist judge can be overused, but I don't know what else to call this guy, because if it's during a stay, if it's being settled, the only worry could be that it's going to get settled. So I'll throw out the case.
Right.
So I know you're appealing, and
Right.
It'll be a strong appeal, because of this. But I think it's shameful. I think too, I'll say it, you don't have to say it, it reflects poorly on the Trump administration, because their whole thing, campaigning was the weaponization of the DOJ, and we've got to fix it. And I know, he probably isn't even aware that this is going on, but it just looks bad. It's definitely on the list of nothing's changed. This could be Biden's DOJ. This could be Biden's judge.
Right.
Nothing's changed, because all the reasons you just listed, you're not a flight risk, you don't have a gun, you have no prior,
Right.
you're not a criminal. That's why you got acquitted by a jury in Philadelphia.
In less than an hour.
In less than an hour.
Yeah.
So, the people have spoken. You, I think, rightly so, filed a lawsuit against the DOJ because they have to be held accountable. Right. And basically, as they were starting to be held accountable, the judge tossed it, and now it just extends everything. We got to go through the appeal process.
Yeah, it's definitely disconcerting to see a Pam Bondi or a Kash Patel say this has to stop, right, in their confirmation hearings. and the Josh Hawleys, the Jim Jordans, the folks that all are pushing that, and yet this happens. Like you would think, okay, all right, we're expecting some sort of understanding, and I hope he does hear about this. I hope he does recognize that, wait a minute, this is happening? You did what? It's about the American people having justice and accountability being rendered, and for them to continue to know that they can go out and exercise their First Amendment rights with no fear. But with this judge doing what he did, I don't know if you can say that.
Well,
I don't know.
There's no way that anybody can say that the FBI handled this well and that the raid was appropriate. And one of his younger children were at the back door. We were terrified. I mean, there's no argument that the force wasn't excessive, and it was absolutely absurd for a guy who didn't do anything wrong, and then for a guy who offered to turn himself in. So my whole thing is, if they're not going to pay for that, if they're not going to have some kind of penalty, then I don't know what they can't do,
Right.
and who they can't do it to.
Right.
And so I know it's very frustrating. I'm sorry that it's getting extended. It's been a long road, with you, and it's just going to get longer with the appeal. But I hope y'all know, and this, there's a lot of people rooting for you. There's a lot of people praying for you. I have friends who shall remain nameless, who are former, prosecutors at the DOJ. Some of them are current, and they're like, please sue us and win. We need it. It's just like, it's like my cousin Vinny when he said, sometimes I just need to get the crap kicked out of me. And that definitely needs to happen to the DOJ, because it's out of control. It's out of control, and it's why Trump was given a mandate, is because the liberals don't want this. This is not, we don't want people's doors, busted down in front of their children and then be like, oh, sorry, bro.
Well, here's what's so
Well,
disconcerting.
there is no sorry.
Yeah.
Either. So there's not
Yeah.
even any kind
There's
of
no acknowledgement,
public
like,
apology.
We did
anything.
wrong here. Yeah,
Yeah.
like they should have said, look, you know what? We withdraw our motion to dismiss this, which is what they had, and say, you know what? We acknowledge that this was wrong, and we're not going to fight this. They didn't do that. And what's so disconcerting, again, is that, as they advanced this, that, our people in this country will suffer continually, that our kids will continue to suffer, and that the closure that we so desperately want for them and for ourselves is not going to be delivered. And so, you live in fear of it happening again, not only to yourselves but to others, and you want to know that that this administration, which wrote this message to the White House, is willing to step in, and they're doing it for other organizations. They're doing it in the DOJ. They're doing it with all the things they're cleaning house.
They pardoned all the pro-lifers,
But
except for you.
But the
Well, we
reality,
didn't need it.
we
Right,
have
right.
deep. The reality is, and I guess this in a long way I was trying to say, there's deep state holdovers that are still in place that they have to be discovered and found out. And if this is what it takes to get them out, then so be it. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who are establishment people who still want this stuff to continue. And it's just disgraceful upon the administration.
It is disgraceful, and I think if anybody can fix it, it'll be this administration. As we said before, I like Pam Bondi. I think she's fantastic. I think what Kash Patel is doing is awesome. This needs to get fixed, because this, as unfortunately, as I said earlier to y'all, you're the poster child for the weaponization of the DOJ, of like, this can just happen to this dad who like offered to turn himself in and lives in the woods, and they show up at his driveway and all that.
Well,
it's wild, and they knew it was wrong. The jury knew it was wrong, and for them to say, nah, this is just how we do things around here, it's not a big deal, the guy needs to get over it, his wife needs to get over it, the kids need to get over it. I think it's shameful, and so we'll keep going. We'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
We'll move forward with the appeal, and we'll continue to support y'all and to get your story out there.
Well, thanks to 40 Days for Life and you and Matt for your leadership, because you guys are the ones that have been supporting us from the very beginning. So we're grateful for that. And,
thank you. We're
thanks for
happy
your
to do so, and we'll keep it going.
all right.
Okay. Good seeing y'all.
You too.